follow it through until the end. And so it's a really big privilege to be able to be hosting this session. To give you a bit of background, I am Jemima. I'm one of the leaders of Covenant Culture on the team, and we've been really excited about this month. We've had so much fun. We've learned so much, and trust me, I know that everybody's been blessed and they've been given such great comments. We want to keep this going. We want to keep it coming. We're going to have a Slido with all the questions on, where you can put stuff down below, and any questions that haven't been answered before will be answered today or in the next session the week after this coming Sunday. And yeah, just get excited for it. I also want to encourage everybody who may be married. It might feel as though we're talking about topics that are only for single people, but let's not forget that we are a group. We are people who do not just operate for ourselves, but we operate for other people as well. And so, you know, by everyone being able to fit into everybody else's life and give them information, whether it be your children or your cousins or anybody that you might know who might be single, all the information that we're getting now is really great. It's great advice, and it'll be things that we can be able to even tell people about. And one thing I also want to highlight is that I absolutely loved last week's session. If you missed it, please do catch it when you can after this. It was really beautiful. The couples were so honest and raw. So please feel free, ask any question. We want honest and open and raw and transparency in this session, and that's what we want to encourage as young people. So I want to start the session by introducing our couples, our beautiful couples. We have two sets of couples. The first one, Princess and Ezekiel, the other one, Nadia and Chinedu. And I cannot see them on my screen, but I know they are in the meeting because right now I can mainly see the pastor, but I know they are here. So if you would like to introduce yourself, just say a hey, and then I will orchestrate the order of the meeting. So Princess and Ezekiel, if you just say hello.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. We are Princess and Ezekiel Omoshevi. We've been married for 4 years in April, by God's grace. We had a lockdown wedding, which is quite interesting.
Very
but we thank God. And yeah, we're here to just share as little as we know tonight with everyone.
I'm sure you have a multitude of knowledge. We're all here to absorb. Everybody, if I didn't say before, get your paper and your pen. These two couples that we have here are packed with things. Don't mind them saying they have little. We can learn so much from them. So even the newlyweds, we want to say whoop whoop, congratulations, you guys. Would you like to introduce yourself, Chinedu and Nadia?
Hi, I'm Nadia Orji.
Chinedu Orji.
We've been married now for barely almost 3 months now. So we're just very newlyweds. So thank you for having us, and hopefully we'll be able to share a bit of the knowledge we have gathered within the short period of time.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, because people might be saying, why do we have a new couple speaking about marriage? But loads of young people are really interested to know the immediate of what happens. It's like everybody celebrates the wedding and it's like, yay, whoopee. And then what? And everybody kind of wants to know what happens. So we know that you guys are fresh and you'll be able to give the legit raw perspective. And so we're really excited to hear from you. So to get started, what we want to do is to be able to understand you guys, because some of these questions are very specific, and we know that you guys might be able to answer a question in a way that the other ones won't be able to, or may be able to in a different way. So let's get some background. Let's know the love story, the once upon a time. Tell us the Netflix version. How did you guys meet? Let's start with Chinedu and Nadia.
Hello.
How did we meet? Long story short, at work. We both work in a hospital. I'm a nurse. He is a doctor. So I was doing a shift. It was during COVID, towards the end of the COVID pandemic. I was meant to work in my usual ward, but then I was transferred to ICU. From ICU, I was told to go back to my ward, and then from my ward, I was told to go to a medical ward, which I've never been. And I had a deteriorating patient, someone that wasn't doing too well. So I was calling the doctor to come and see my patient, and I was having a hard time getting the doctor to come for a review. And then we finally got doctor to come.
Very clueless one.
I finally got a doctor to come in and review my patient. But then the patient was all right and stable. And this was our first encounter.
Yeah. No, it was actually quite, what would you say, coincidental
Very
or whatever,
coincidental.
because I've never worked in the hospital before. It was during COVID. I was in surgery, and in the same hospital, I was moved to medicine because obviously during COVID, everybody was moved around. And then due to short style, I was then shifted to a different hospital. And then not just a different hospital, I was shifted to a different ward because she kept on calling the doctors and she wouldn't just relax for a bit. So I've never worked in the ward before. I've never worked in the department before. I had no idea what I was doing. But because I was the newest doctor there, obviously they just pushed me towards that place, and they pushed me towards her. So
I love that.
Love that. That's so great. That's really interesting because I think a lot of the questions that we were getting in the previous weeks were about meeting in church, but you guys actually met at work. So how did you guys know that you were Christians? How did you know that, oh, this is where this will work, this will be good? Or did you already have an idea? But you did say you just met at that time. So how did you find out?
We had no idea because at work is strictly professional. So we're just talking about,
very professional.
He was very professional, as you can tell. So we're here now. So, so at work we mainly speak about professional stuff, but I think he was new to UK, so he was trying to get his head around the system and everything. And that day he was quite busy and needing some help with some things, and I was quite happy to help him. And at the end of the shift, sorry, he said, "Oh, I'm new to the UK. I don't have many friends. Can I please get your number so you can help me find my ways around things?"
I remember this.
And I was very clueless. I was like, "Okay, that's fine. Someone that needs a hand, I'm happy to help if you need anything." So I was, I gave him my number, and they speak the same day. We spoke the same day, didn't we?
We talked 3 hours that night.
We spoke, yeah. So we found out a lot of things, especially mainly that, we're both Christians. We came from a Christian family and background. So yeah, 3 hours, our first conversation. So a lot of things got unpacked.
Wow, that is really, really interesting. No, I love that. I love how different it is. I know that everybody will have a different love story and it will play out in a different way, but I think it feels encouraging to know, like, oh, God won't just work in church. He can work outside of church and still lead you to people who are also chasing after his heart. So I absolutely love that. Really quick for context as well, how old were you guys when you met? And what countries are you from? It's all relevant, don't worry. We're just trying to know.
I was 24 when we met, and
2020, I was 29.
Yeah, 24, 29. I'm Cape Verdean.
As you can tell.
No, you cannot tell. And you're
Nigerian.
As you can tell, Nigerian, yeah.
We love a full mix. That's so great. We'll definitely have some questions about that then, because a lot of people do want to know about mixing different cultures and even like visions, mentalities, and yeah, so we'll dig deeper into that. So hold that thought. We're going to go to our next couple, Princess and Ezekiel. We want to know all of the tea. What happened? How did you guys meet? Break it down for us.
Okay, so let me I'll start with the story and then Ezekiel can fill in the gaps. Just a little disclaimer, we have our little daughter here with us. We couldn't find a babysitter in time, sorry. So just in case you see us move out of the camera. Yeah, so how did we meet? I think in the city of Manchester. Ezekiel's somebody that like I've known like for a very long time, from high school all the way through to yeah, like just through life. But we just were in separate friendship groups. So he was more friends with my older siblings. So they would all hang out and like do things together. So we knew each other, but not in close proximity. And then I think it was, what year was it?
2023 now, I think that's 2018 or 19, something like that.
2018, 2019. And then I think that was when, over the span of maybe like a year, our paths really started crossing. So I think how it started was we would just bump into each other randomly. And I'm like, oh, hey, you good? How are you? I'm good. And then I think where everything really started was, I can't remember if it was a graduation or just a birthday celebration, but it was at Sembe's house. And because yeah, we've all grown up together, mutual friends. So he walks in, and I remember I was in the kitchen, and it was just the same. Oh, hi, you okay? How's life treating you? But this time it was different. Like he was just he had a lot of follow-up questions. But anyone that knows me, I like to pride myself in being very alert. Like things don't just catch me unawares. But this one I didn't see coming. He was just like, "Oh, how's life?" He said game, okay. So he was just like, how's life? How are things going? And I just thought, oh, in that moment, I was just like, oh my gosh, wow, you know, this is just somebody that really cares about how life is treating me. So I'm there in the noisy kitchen trying to give him a breakdown of the updates in my life. I was like, well, I'm working, I'm doing this. And then he just like stops me. He was like, oh, actually, yeah, let me just have your number and then we'll just carry on catching up. So I was just like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, let's catch up. Yeah, I want to know what's new with you, kind of thing. Because it was just like a long time friend, and we're just catching up, kind of thing. I think it was when we swapped numbers.
Hello.
Hi. It was when we swapped numbers, and I was
Hi,
really
lovely. Are you right?
It was when we swapped numbers and I was just like engaging some of the conversations that I was just like, this is a little bit suspect because this doesn't feel like a catching up. This feels like he's trying to move a little bit funny. And I'm not sure what's going on here. And I remember speaking to people like, oh, is it me or is Ezekiel texting me a little bit funny? And then I think after that, he approached me through Sembe actually. And then the journey really started from there in terms of us actually getting to know each other, and we are where we are today, married, and we have a 2-year-old. That's my version. Over to you.
I think from my perspective, it's a lot more. It started a while back. So, obviously, like Princess said, I've been friends with Princess' older sister and brother for a while, but I never really spoke to Princess like that. We never really had a long conversation, never really spoke or anything like that. We just kind of just knew of each other, sort of thing. So, I remember over a space. I know some people might say, "Oh, this is spiritual," but honest truth was I had a dream about Princess about 4 times over a space of a year. And when I say like had a dream about Princess, like I barely saw her for it to be like, oh, I just saw her and it triggered a thing. So I remember one of the dreams, we're sat in a park and we're just talking about our lives together, just talking about like loads of life events and things like that. So I said to one of my friends, I was like, it's so weird, but I had a dream about this girl. Do you know this girl, Princess? And my friend was like, oh yeah, I remember Princess. That I saw her at this event a couple of weeks back. And I never thought anything about it. I was just like, do you know what? It's nothing. I'll just leave it. Then we get to Sembe's house and I opened the door and the first person in the corridor was Princess. So I was there in the car with my friend, telling my friend about his dreams. And literally, obviously, he looked at me and just starts laughing. And then I was like, do you know what? Before I get close to anybody, I like to, whether it be anything, business, work, friend, whatever it is, I like to study people. So I said, you know what? That's when I took her number, I took her Snapchat. And the day I took her Snapchat was a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday or Saturday. Next thing you know, my lovely wife decides that she's going to go on a 1 month fast from Snapchat. And I was like, oh, great. I just took your Snapchat so I can try to get to know you and try to understand who you are. And just kind of see, because a lot of times you can tell how people's, whether it be a fake life or real life, is on social media. So I was trying to kind of watch her and see how she is before I even said anything. And then I remember after about a month, she came back on Snapchat and then we just started talking and I was open and honest at the start. I said to her, look, the thing is, I had a dream about you. I'm not sure what it means, but I just want us to be friends first. Just be friends, nothing more, and then let's see how it goes. And Yeah, the rest is history. And by God's grace, we are happily married, 4 years now. Yeah.
No, I love it. Princess's comment, women intuition is not wrong most of the time. And your part is really beautiful, Ezekiel. It's kind of funny because I think in our generation, we're like, oh, if he asks for your social media, he's not serious. So I like that we're breaking down the stereotypes here and saying, like, no, like you will be able to tell when it's genuine or not genuine. Read it. If they're asking for their social media and they're looking a bit somehow, you can tell, you know. So I really thank you for breaking that down. Also, just like we did with Tinadu and Nadia, how old were you guys when you met and got married?
The married was 24.
Yeah, so I think I was 27 when we met, and then married. I think we married about a year and about, so nearly 2 years after, shortly after. So yeah, I was 27 when we first started talking, and then 26, 22 or 23, I think. Sorry, the dates dates skipped my mind. It's about 4 years. It feels like we've been married for ages now. But yeah, I think so 4 years ago, 32 this year. Yeah, we got married when I was 28. You were 24.
Yeah, that's when we got married. Yeah,
and
but then
we
we
met
met
2 years earlier.
So
about 20, yeah, 26, 22.
Wow, that's young. So Princess is 22 years old, just to clarify.
Yeah,
And
yeah, when we met, but
When we met.
married, I think I was 24.
Yeah, I was 28.
wow, no, so that's like on the younger side, because I think nowadays people are saying getting married around 30 years old has become kind of the normal-ish age. It's kind of just gone up with time. I don't know if you guys can attest to that, but I'm definitely seeing the mindset change. So I do love that. So I kind of want to get into questions based off of you guys and what you said. Please do keep the Slido questions coming through. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm trying to make sure that I'm asking the right questions and getting everybody's point of view in. But I really want to hound in on the fact that I know that Princess and Ezekiel didn't go to the same church. So when you guys met, how did you kind of suss that you guys would have similar values and almost beliefs and faiths? For example, I know some churches might have certain very strict doctrine, which you know, we can take as be pleased in terms of whether it is Bible or not. But you know, people have different doctrines. So how did you guys adjust with that and getting to know each other in those?
I'll go first and then I'll just ask if Ezekiel has anything else. I think in terms of belief system, good thing for us was because we grew up together, we sort of knew of each other. I think one thing that really helped Ezekiel in the whole journey was the fact that because he was friends with my siblings through his like crucial years, I knew all the gist of what was going on because my siblings would come home and talk about their friends. So before I even knew him or even wanted to even like develop a friendship, when I like just prayed and sought, you know, counsel, I think one thing that I had peace about was just the fact that through the years there's been that consistent character, consistent faith, just the kind of things they would say about him. I never really heard anything that was like gonna cause me any form of concern. And then of course fast forwarding it to when we actually did start speaking, just questions and questions and questions to just find out exactly where we're at in terms of our walk with God. And I think beyond the questions, the observing as well. So it was a mixture of different things. So I think, yeah, just asking questions and the right kind of questions, and listening out for not just the responses, but even the things that are not being said, and just, yeah, observing. I think that's my part.
What sort of made it easy for us was because I already knew New Covenant Church from many years ago, because some of my friends go there. So it made it quite easy for me to sort of know that, do you know what, if she goes to New Covenant Church, it's a Bible believing church. It's a church that I've been to myself. I've seen how the doctrine is there, and I'm more than comfortable to like, in the words of Pastor, take one of his daughters from the church. And I know Pastor's still making me pay for it up to today, but I felt
yeah.
It was an easy option basically. It wasn't a difficult one because I kind of knew about NCC from many years ago, so that made it easier.
Yeah, and then I want to point it to now Chinadu and Nadia, because you guys now know that you knew each other's churches, so it was easier. How about you guys, where you don't literally have anything to go off of? How did you how did you process understanding each other's, you know, beliefs and visions for life and things like that?
From our background, I grew up a Catholic, still a Christian, and you
Deeper life,
Different-
Pentecostal.
Pentecostal, yeah. So we had a bit of not difference in values, because when you're Christian regardless of which church you go to. But after we met, he slowly introduced me to Cell, which is our love capital group that we have, which was quite a focal point where we sort of develop our values and foundation in our relationship, because he's basically was one of the first people that I met of opposite sex that introduced me to a Christian-led environment, if that makes sense. So there, it helped me sort of understand it better, that we do have a common interest in God. Because for him to present me to Sal and introduce him to his friends, which are quite Christian, the Christians are orientated by that sense. So it was quite important to know that that's the life that he led. So yeah.
No, I think obviously when we met, you were Catholic. I mean, you can say I was the more religious one, but my background is deeper life, parents deeper life, only sister deeper life, all pastors or whatever. But I was a rebel in deeper life. So if you know about deeper life youths in Nigeria, we're always rebelling at a certain point of our life. So I was rebelling. I was in the point of leaving the church, just like Zubi as well. Me and Zubi were, he was more advanced than me. So I wasn't like deeply religious at all. I was in Cell because Zubi introduced me to Cell and I liked the idea. And then when we met, you were Catholic. I remember we had a bit of discussion initially, and you were like, "Oh, you're gonna be Catholic. You want to remain in Catholic." I thought you don't know what you're talking about, but I just didn't want to get into it then. But then I wasn't also religious. I was very flexible. However, with Zubi's encouragement and all those things, we were both involved in Cell. So I think when I then introduced you to Cell, and I saw how much you liked Cell and how much you were attending, I was like, oh my God, then I have to actually step up and attend Cell, because I wasn't as attentive as I was before you joined. So I think it's sort of a situation where you pushed me as much as I pushed you, in the whole religious journey. Yeah.
No, I love that. That's really interesting, especially like from different denominations as well. And I know that Catholics do things, even though we all believe in the same God, I know that Catholics kind of do things a bit differently to like Pentecostals and Deeper Life. My parents, one of my parents used to go to Deeper Life, and I know that it's very different. And so coming to this like kind of merging, it seems like you guys merged your own into your own thing, not like sticking to like Catholic or Deeper Life you, and that's really beautiful to see. And I think that should be encouraging to all of us as well, that we need to make sure that we're finding God for ourselves and not what we are used to, because when we do that, then we're able to create something beautiful. And marriage is like literally the union of those two things, and the fact that you guys were in agreement, I'm assuming, is what made it work. But if you guys were like just stuck, I'm sure the stories would be very different. So that is so important, and I love that lesson. I'm going to go back a little bit, because we talked about the dating, but I want to talk about the pre you met anybody, like before you met anybody. It was just Princess Ezekiel, Chinadu and Nadia doing their thing. And there's some questions that I think are really great to ask in terms of the waiting for God to show you your spouse. And I think somebody did ask on the Slido a couple of weeks back. They said, how do you deal with the waiting for God to bring or show my spouse, as I really desire to get married and I feel impatient? And so how did any of you guys experience that? I know for women, typically, not trying to stick any stereotypes, but I know that women tend to like also feel this a lot more. But I'd also love to know if the guys actually felt the pressure or felt any impatience. So, we'll just keep going between Ezekiel and Princess since they introduced talk last. We'll go to Ezekiel and Princess.
Yeah, I think I think the most important thing that I would say to anyone that desires to marry is not, don't let the desire of marriage drive you, but let the desire of God's will drive you. What I mean by that is if you allow the desire to get married to drive you, you can easily make a mistake.
Mm.
You hear of stories of people that they marry somebody and they are they paint a certain picture of themselves, almost putting their best foot during courtship or whatever it is, and then you get married and it becomes something else. I'm not saying that's why, some marriages fail. However, that's some of the reasons why some marriages fail is some people are just so eager to get married that they miss the red flags as well. I think it's important to make sure that in your desire to get married, you make sure that you seek God's face and don't be afraid to enjoy your single days as well. Like learn yourself. Someone taught me something. They said, if you can't love to be happy with yourself, you can't be happy being with somebody else. And it's the truth. If you can't learn to love yourself in your single days, there's no person you're going to marry in this planet that will fulfill you with happiness. It's not possible because they will fail you some days, they will annoy you some days. Um, I'll be honest and completely transparent with you guys. So we had Uncle Divine and Auntie Angela as our mentors during courtship and during marriage, and before we got married. And there was a lot of things that they talked us through. But even in the first year of our marriage, it was very difficult for me and Princess because I was so used to sort of living by myself, doing my own thing. And then we got married in April, which was like the first month of lockdown, like the proper lockdown. So I went from being independent to being in a house with a woman that I couldn't even leave the house. So we had a misunderstanding. We fought. We had misunderstandings. We disagreed on a lot of things, but it was God that helped us to get to that place where. But because she was happy with herself, I was happy with myself. She found joy in herself. I found joy in myself. We didn't have to depend on each other for that joy because the moment you start to depend on each other for that joy, then it takes away the actual fact that you're gonna have a successful marriage. But I think it's important to know that in all things, don't let the drive to be married drive you the wrong way, if that makes sense. Rather, let the will of God drive you. And for a woman, if you are seeking God for marriage, put yourself out there a little bit. Make yourself available out there. And for a guy as well, if you're seeking God for marriage, I'll tell you something now, there is no perfect woman out there. I told my wife when we got married, I said, you're not perfect. You're right. You're not perfect, but you're the person God has created for me. But you're not perfect because you can't be perfect. It's only God that can be perfect. So the moment you go into marriage thinking you're going to find this beautiful woman, slim body, amazing makeup on fleek, hair always on point. She wakes up every morning looking like an angel. Like it's just not realistic. It's having that realistic expectation. So I think it's important not to allow the drive for marriage drive you the wrong way. Rather let the will of God drive you. But make yourself available. Go out there for single events. Go out there for opportunities. And it's not just because a guy approaches you and he's not your spec doesn't mean you say no straight away. Or just because a girl starts to pay you attention and she's not your spec doesn't mean you say no straight away. Some people have missed their blessings because of something. I tell some of our young people in church as well. One thing I do say to them is just because someone's a nice person doesn't mean that you're a nice person. Align with God. Let God lead you. Just because someone's a nice person, because if you meet a nice person but they're the wrong person for you, you can make them a bad person, and you can make yourself a bad person as well. So I think overall, just allow God's will drive you more than the desire to be married. That's what.
Great. Princess, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think you're asking more about like how we found it individually as well. I think my experience was a little bit different because I don't think at that time marriage was something I actually desired. I think I was in the stage of just enjoying life.
And then I came along and swooped up my feet.
That knew me at that time, even as my siblings, I was barely at home. I just wanted to attend conferences. I wanted to meet new people. At one point, I was like, God, are you sure I'm not gonna move to London? Because it seems like that's where all the events are. I was just in that stage of my life of just seeking God, growing deeper in my walk with him, and I was genuinely enjoying myself, enjoying serving in God's house, enjoying just being available and just whatever God will have me do. I think so much so that when Ezekiel came along, it was almost like, yeah, I don't, not now kind of thing. So it took a lot of I guess really praying about it as well. Like what Ezekiel was saying, like don't just shut people down if in that moment it doesn't seem like that's not your spec or timeline that you've planned for your life kind of thing. I think there were so many other things that I really wanted to have in place even before I entertained a relationship. So for me, don't get me wrong, being in a relationship is nice. It was something that I didn't desire it, but if it happened, like it wasn't the end of the world kind of thing. But it wasn't something that I was actively looking for. Yeah, I was just trying to live my best life, really. My best life in God. I'll put that there. Yes, I think because I think even the whole spec thing, I think that was something that I nearly allowed to because I felt like I wasn't in the headspace for a relationship at the time. I was looking for things to almost things as signal from God that yeah, this was never meant to be kind of thing. So one being I was like, I don't even think this guy is my spec. I don't think this is somebody that I actually see in that way. So I was like, oh, I don't even need to pray about this. God, maybe this is just you telling me, just leave it, focus on me. Kind of, I was looking for everything up until the time where I really had to sit myself down and God was like, okay, what are the real issues here? Because you don't really have any solid point for not even trying to pursue a friendship. Okay, even if you're saying, okay, this is not leading anywhere, just a friendship, and then we take it from there. And then I think that was really where I had to like be honest with myself and start the journey. So my experience was a little bit different in terms of actually desiring marriage.
And now she can't do without me.
Oh my God. Humble yourself.
No, I absolutely love what you guys said. As a single person myself, these things do come to your mind. Like I know I've been reading Ben Stewart's Single, Dating, Engaged, Marriage. I read it a time ago. And one of the things that they said was that when you're like running and you're focused towards Jesus, at some point you'll look to your side and realize there's somebody who is next to you. And I feel like when you actually stay focused on what you're supposed to do, if you enjoy your singleness, you do the activities, you do the hobbies, eventually you'll lose track of the fact that you're single. And then when someone shows up, it's like, hey, like I mean, I'm happy, but I was having a lot of fun, you know? And so I feel like that would definitely help with being able to get rid of the impatience. I really do love that. And so if you're finding impatience, like find out, am I just having a lot of spare time? And if you're single, I mean, even Paul says it, a single man focuses on the things of God. They're not just the thing of God, but you actually get to be aware of like where you're at in life, where you can become. And so I think yeah, if you're able to do that and really like Princess and like Ezekiel said, just go out to places, meet new people, go to conferences and just commune with like whatever you feel like the Lord wants to take you to or interests and hobbies that you have. And I feel like you'll just lose track of time. I think majority of people that I've met who are married as well, they say they met that person when they least expecting it. They met that person when they least expecting it. So I think that will really help. And to Ezekiel's point as well, I really loved what you said about like not trying to find your joy within marriage and to try to find it within yourself. Marriage isn't a crutch at all. It's not a crutch that you lean on all your problems or anything like that. It's something that is a gift from God. It's not a reward for something that you've done. It is a place where you're able to like, you know, share together and pray together and become the force that God has created us to be. But you also need to be able to do it yourself, because at the end of the day, we all stand before God on our own. And so we have to make sure that we are the people that God wants us to be and doing those things diligently seeking to just become everything and more, you know, and that the Lord has called us to be in the time. But I find it really interesting as well, Princess, that you said that you were not ready. You didn't feel ready for it, because I think it's funny, the people who are ready now, like, where's my Boaz, God? Where's my Boaz? They're waiting, and you weren't ready at all, and in your mind at least. And I find that really interesting. And I hope that people who maybe even aren't ready can start to see, like, I feel like what you did is just keep that, God, I'm not ready now, but it's almost like a loose grip on saying, okay, but if you want to take me, let your will be done. And it shows that marriage is just a beautiful thing that God orchestrates for his will, and for something beautiful like your little girl to come by. So, you know, I really appreciate you sharing that. I realize that if I go back and forth between the questions, it'll be behind time. So I'm going to ask Chinadu and Nadia a different question. So people say, we've heard on Slido, sorry, one of the questions was, we've heard that you shouldn't date until you're ready to marry. But how do you know a relationship is the one if you've never been in a relationship that hasn't been the one? That's a bit of a tongue twister there.
Okay.
So sorry, I think we both didn't understand the question.
If you can just, yeah.
I'll ask it slower. So it said, we've heard that you shouldn't date until you're ready to marry. But how do you know a relationship is the one if you've never been in a relationship that isn't the one?
So every relationship you have been, you're going thinking that is the one. Is that?
No, I get what you're
you're
trying to
saying?
say. So
Yeah.
obviously, like you don't date until you're ready to marry. But if you don't date, how would you know
How would
you're
you know?
ready to
Yeah.
marry?
Okay.
I think there's a truth to that, and I also think it obviously is not black or white, because obviously I also agree that if you're absolutely not ready to marry, there's really no point in dating, because I feel like you're wasting the other person's time, especially if it's someone that is marriage oriented. And being Christians, if you're not marriage oriented, I don't see the point of dating. So to that point, I agree that if marriage is not even in the picture at all, then what's the point of dating? Because I feel like dating is just a way to know if you're marriage compatible or not. So that's my opinion on that. I don't know what's it.
I would say I sort of go in a similar wavelength, meaning that sometimes it can be very hard for you to date someone without the intent of marrying, because you might be leading that person on that actually has genuine desire for marriage and see you in that future, and you're basically just wasting that time, if that makes sense. And you're preventing that person from actually finding a potential husband or a potential wife. So I think the intention is very important when you meet someone, especially someone from an opposite sex, because why develop an intimate sort of relationship with someone? It doesn't have to be intimate, meaning even like in a spiritual level, in a emotional level, when you know that it might lead to one of them developing actual feelings towards each other. So I think in that being intentional and being transparent about your intention is very important. And so just allowing that person to understand what your intentions are from a get-go perspective, because that's what you were quite intentional from the time that we started speaking. He was very intentional, meaning saying, I want to get married. I don't want to waste your time. This is what I want. And if you're going to do this, let's do this the right way. So being intentional is very important.
And I think for both of us, we were both ready when we started dating, because I know I didn't date until after medical school. I didn't even have any relationship, any girlfriend, nothing at all. That was about 24, 25, because I knew for a fact that the only reason why I would date, I'm just not interested in just with time wasting. It's just not what I do. And I think maybe not exactly the same thing for you, but eventually as well.
Yeah. So I think it's just being intentional about what you want and seeking people that have similar values to you. It's very important. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it's good perspectives that have been given. I do believe, I think in a scavenge to find the one, you will end up finding none, because there'll be a million ones. And so being intentional with, this is what I want, and it will mean that you're not there trying to be like, but what happens if the one that is the one isn't the one, and there's another one that is somebody else's one, and you're going to get confused. And so I truly believe, even leading to what Ezekiel and Princess said, and you guys have said as well, when you trust in God, you're not going to need to have tried and picked and different ways. Like it says that he makes our path straight. So it doesn't mean there'll be 5 paths and I'll be saying which one is it. It'll be one very clear path. And so, I do know that like there is the stress of like, oh, but how will I know? How do I know that I know? Well, God, do we not trust in God? And it's the thing of like, as you said in our singleness, if you spend the time in your singleness getting to go closer to God, when you do that, you'll actually find that he will guide your path. Because when we say we came to Christ and we say, oh, Jesus, you're my Lord over my life means he rules over it all, which means I'm trusting you with the decisions that you make. So if you've not gotten any direction for the decision, then you just stay and say, Lord, you know what, I'm going to keep on this path. It's not a bad thing. I don't think you have to have been in several relationships to find the one. And that doesn't mean if things don't work out, it was a bad thing, you've done a bad thing. No, but just leave your heart open to the fact that let God lead you and just believe and trust that if I am obeying God and going this pathway, the one will be the one. And the one might look like something you don't expect, like Princess, or it might be something that you run into like on accident, like Chidu and Nadia, but it will be right. And the truth of the matter is the one won't be perfect either, because sometimes there'll be hardships. Those things happen in relationships. So if you're saying the one needs to be flying on wings and of gold and be carried by the cherubims, you just have to give up in your mind then. But yeah, the one is the one that you're willing to journey with and become closer to Christ with, and fulfill purpose and vision with and raise kids with. So yeah, go on, Ezekiel and Princess.
Yeah, that's so good what Jemima said. That's pretty much what I was going to say in terms of that ability to I think if we're talking about people that don't know Christ, then maybe we would word it differently. But I think when we think about things like the one, when we think about things like marriage, it starts off first with trusting God. And funny enough, you're talking about God leading us, in a path according to his will. And there's a scripture that talks about God leading us along the best pathway for our lives, what he has ordained for us. And I found that it's also about trusting God's timeline for your life and the path he chooses to take you on. So I think whether it means by the fifth or the second person, that's when you find the right person, or for some people it's by the very first you find the right person. And I think I'll be honest and open to say that was something that was really scary for me, because I just knew that like I said, this is my heart, I can't take heartbreak. I just didn't want to get it wrong. And there were so many times where it put so much fear in me that I wouldn't even step out, because I was just like, oh, what if, the what ifs kind of thing. But actually just trusting God. I think there was a scenario that happened where there was someone that I briefly spoke to before I met Ezekiel, and I think every step of the way I was like, God, is this you? Are we going ahead? Are we not, kind of thing? And there were certain things I felt like I had the green light on, that when things went a little bit south, I was just like, God, what's happening? Like, I thought this was gonna be the best pathway, means no issue, no error, first time we get it right, kind of thing. And I think in that moment I couldn't understand, but I didn't realize that the things that God opened my eyes to see about myself, about the kind of person I can be in relationships, was what prepared me for when Ezekiel did come along. So I think that's why I would say it's about trusting God, but also trusting the timeline he has for your life and the path he chooses, how he chooses to lead you on that path. So it's not even about comparing, because for some people, the first time they get it right. But I think knowing in God, whatever path he chooses to lead you on, nothing is ever wasted in him. So like my example, thankfully it wasn't anything that went far or anything like that. But for me, I just felt like I had invested my time and I didn't understand why God even allowed anything to even happen to begin with. But I think when Ezekiel came along, I had more confidence. I had more confidence about some of the questions I wanted.
I think there's some about this pen.
You need to mute yourself. I had more confidence about some of the topics I knew that I needed clarity on right from the beginning, based on what I had experienced with the first conversation and the talking stage I had with somebody else, and some of the questions even about faith that I was like, this is crucial. I need to ensure that I learn about things like this. I learned about myself in terms of how sensitive I can be about certain things. So there were just things that it really helped me. But when Ezekiel came, I found out I was a lot more confident in terms of the things I knew that I had to discuss and get out of the way before we even got anywhere. But yeah, that's what I was going to add. I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, that's pretty much said it.
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful. And I think it is a thing of, like you said, like either way, God makes everything beautiful in his time. He makes everything good. And then knowing that if you go in with that mindset, that princess had, where it's like you're with somebody, but you're like, God, like, what do you think? Don't just say, I'm going in, and then like halfway through, you're like, oh God, wait, what happened? He's like, you didn't tell me what you're doing, you didn't involve me, so what do you want me to do? Of course, God comes through in every circumstance, but I think it's going in like that. Like somebody comes in, you give them a chance. Giving someone a chance doesn't mean you're committing to anything or anybody, but you go in, you have that time, and then you go reflect and pray after and say, Lord, what are you saying? And go in with that half-hearted mindset, not like trying full on, like, is this my husband? But just seeing what the Lord is saying. I think that's advice that I've gotten as well. So yeah, I really love that. And one of the things I'd want to share is that one thing I told myself growing up, I was like, God, all 7 billion people in the world. You can go in with that half-hearted mindset, not like someone themselves. Thank you. Everybody is yesterday, today, and they're tomorrow. I don't know that, so I'm leaving that to you. And I feel like that's really kept me in circumstances where you just think you want to dive in and things like that. So I really love that. I'm going to do 2 quick fire questions and we'll move on to the dating phase, even though we're kind of talking about it. So my first quick fire question is, during this stage of individuality, what meaning like even in childhood, and this will be really handy for the people who are already married but want to be like mentors or act as people they can look up to and people who are seeking for this stage of life. So what are the things that you saw in either your parents or people around you that influenced your expectations, and or even who you are as a person today? What's something that someone said or something that you saw? Just one thing, if you can.
I don't mind. There was something that Uncle Divine said to me that really helped me to not just have a godly relationship, but one that put the fear of God in me. Uncle Divine said he told us that when he met his wife, he said, if I sleep with you, I'll never marry you. Before we get married. And I said the same thing to Prince. I said, if we ever do anything like that, I'm not marrying you. And that helped us to stay pure, to keep ourselves. And just that one statement really changed my sort of perspective in that sort of, like it just meant you're serious, not just with yourself, but with God as well. It gave you that sort of boldness. And I think there's one other word that Uncle taught me that up till today I still use and I share with my friends, is capacity. Asking God to give you capacity with your wife. Anything that you love in this world will stretch you. But if you don't ask God for capacity to keep working with that stretching, you get overwhelmed, you get broken, you get trampled on, you get disappointed, you get your heart broken. But if you ask God to give you capacity to keep kind of widening your capacity, like I can say now that my capacity for my wife keeps growing every day, and likewise her for me as well, keeps growing every day, because then it gives us a chance for us to make mistakes, to sometimes not do the things that we both want to do the same way we want to do it, but yet still show each other grace, because I have capacity for her errors. She has capacities for my errors as well. And that's really helped us in our relationship and kept us going. So definitely that.
I think for me, to give actual examples, I spent a lot of time living away from my parents, so it was just me and my siblings for the longest. But I think God is so gracious and merciful that I found that he surrounded me with people that became like family to me and opened their homes. So for example, Uncle Divine and several others. And I think for me that those were the kind of things that I would observe in terms of what was going on in the family unit. I might not ask a lot of questions, but I'm observing and I'm making notes, kind of thing. I think 2 things. One thing I picked up that I really knew that I needed and I wanted in my home was, good teamwork between the husband and the wife, being able to complement each other, and like having a home where it's not like people don't shy away from picking up things that are meant to be like a traditional role in the house. A husband's not afraid to cook, he's not afraid to clean, and the wife not being afraid to do things that maybe others might see as a man's role, kind of thing. So I saw that you know, just from being around other families, and I was like, okay, I like this. I think this is something that I definitely want in my home. And then I think the second thing was healthy communication as well. Being able to communicate, you know, openly with your partner, with your husband, with your wife, and yeah, just that tag team. I saw it a lot in the families around me. So maybe not my exact parents because of closeness and proximity, but I found that I was exposed enough to observe from families that were around me, and I was like, you know, they were just, I think, yeah, I was very intentional to do that observing. So I think even before Ezekiel came, there were things that I saw that I said, you know what, I must have this in my home. And there were things that I saw that I was like, I'm not sure if I like this kind of thing. So it really helped me knowing in terms of what my deal breakers were and the things that I wouldn't mind, you know, yeah, in summary.
Chinadu and Nadia, that was really great, by the way. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with exactly what the last speaker said. In terms of partnership in marriage, I think that's one thing I learned from my parents. It was not the traditional Nigerian marriage. It was way, you know, the relationship between the couple. My mom and dad were very balanced in terms of the power dynamics, and that's what I actually wanted in my marriage, where there's no, I mean, obviously there will be, you know, husband and wife and head of the family, but in terms of how it actually plays out practically, I wanted it very balanced and equal, and I think that's one of the things that attracted me most to her. But on a personal level, I would say what I learned from my parents is the longevity of the marriage and how long they've been together and how intentional they are in being together. And one thing my dad always said is the husbandman, it's not a literal translation, it's not a literal translation, but the husbandman is going to be the first partaker. But what he's trying to say is that whatever decision you make, you will be the person to enjoy it negatively or positively the most. So, which is take your time. And I think that's my lesson from this is take your time, because I had a lot of time where previous friendships, relationships where, you know, even though they met the criteria that I've written down on paper, it just didn't speak to me. I just didn't feel it. You know, obviously, as it goes on, you start feeling like, oh, is there something wrong with me? Or am I being too picky? Am I being too choosy? And you want to settle. I would say never settle, because it's a long, lifelong thing. And one thing about settling is you always ask yourself questions. Oh, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And doubt is never good for marriage. So for me, I never settled. I didn't care what the situation was. If it didn't speak to me, and I think when I met you, I think it was the second day or third day, I told you, you're going to be the one I'll marry. That didn't work out that way. We broke up like almost the next month or something. But because of that conviction, and I knew what I wanted, I knew that it spoke to me, I kept on it. So, and eventually it happened. So I think for me, that's the thing, which is this is a lifelong commitment. So make sure it's who your heart wants. And if it's okay if you don't get the person, it's fine. I would say it's rather better to be alone than to settle. That's my point from the marriage. Yeah.
Well said. Okay. I think for me, looking around me is to have a family which seeks God, and a family. That's what I've seen around me, and something that I really wanted is a union where I know that my kids will grow up seeking God and knowing the love of God and understanding God's value and growing that environment. Because we live in a society where there's a lot of talks and it's sort of decreasing the Christian values and are just decreasing day by day. So it's very important for me to marry someone that loves God and someone that intentionally seeks God's love, value, and try to understand him and you know, develop a relationship around God. And I also, something that I've learned as well from my parents is conflict management, which is something that is inevitable in any relationship. You're gonna have conflict. You're gonna times, bicker with each other and so on. But the end point is how you resolve it. How do you deal with it? How you go past it? And I think with us, we were quite clear from the get-go how we wanted to resolve conflict in our relationship, which is don't go to bed upset with each other. Always talk things through. Always seeks God guidance when there is conflict around us. And if something is bothering us, discuss it. Get it over. Open your chest and talk about it rather than go to bed and just be mad at each other, be upset with each other. So I think that's something that we learning and we're developing as we go as well along in our relationship. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. And I hope all the married couples are taking note. We as single people, even your kids or even somebody else's kids, are all looking at the relationships that are around us, and they are forming our understanding of marriage and almost like what to expect and things. And marriage is a beautiful thing, And so even as Christians, let's encourage ourselves to say like marriage is beautiful. Like it is rough around the edges. I'm sure it's not perfect, but it's a beautiful union made by God. Whilst the world is trying to squish it down, we're saying, no, marriage is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I know for me, like I've seen beauty in my home. I'm so privileged. My parents always emulate love. My dad serving my mom, and it kind of going against the standards of the world where there's a typical like man has to do this, woman has to do this. Like that's really fun me, where it's like everything doing things out of love and how they serve each other and intentional date nights. And it's got me thinking like, yes, I wanna do this because they keep the love alive. And I've seen the love be so amazing at the beginning and even more amazing now, and it's all in our brains. So even aunties and uncles in church, and we're all looking. So it's not to say put a facade on, but it's to say like, you guys working on your marriage is helping us as well. And so really grateful for how you've impacted all of us here. Me, yet to be married, really grateful. Ezekiel, Princess, Tunisia, and Nadia. Last quick fire question on this topic in this section, but specifically Ezekiel and Chinedu. For men, when they know, they know. And let me phrase it differently. It doesn't take a long time for a man to know.
I think that statement is touchy because it's all down to personality and your faith in God and the kind of person you are. There's some men that if they want something, they'll go for it, whether it's wrong or right, they'll go for it. And there's some men that they allow God to lead them first. And there's some men that, even in the leading, they're still not confident. They're still second guessing themselves and things like that. I think for men, it's a very hard thing to say when a man knows he knows, because look at the story of Adam and Eve, right? You see how Eve deceived in this day and age. If that happened in this day and age, right? Let's be realistic. If that happened on social media, everyone will come for the woman and say the woman's evil. She's but Adam knew that evil's the person for him in that scenario. But yet Eve, in this day and age, Eve was seen as a bad person. Now, if I said to a friend of mine said, oh, I'm dating this woman, but she did this to me, and I said she's the one, people would be like, you're mad, you're crazy. She just lied to you. She just deceived you. She made you do this, made you do that. So I think it's important to know that even as a man, sometimes you might think but God is the author of knowing of everything. Now, I think the other thing is just be mindful not to wait too long in the season of you being with somebody. If you're unsure, seek counsel, seek guidance. But I always tell people this: there isn't a perfect person out there for you. There is the person that God has appointed you to be with, or God is allowing you to be with, but there isn't that perfect. She's never gonna hurt me. She's gonna be there by my side 24/7. She's never gonna talk back to me. She's gonna be submissive. She's gonna do this. She's gonna be good with money. She's gonna look good. There is never that one person. But I think the overall thing is, if you want to know, ask God to tell you. I think that's the first thing. Don't lean on your own understanding, because if you do, it will let you down.
But I feel like when God then tells you, once you know, right?
Yeah. When God tells you, once you know, then you know. But I think it's that whole thing. I think from a woman's perspective, women might think, oh, if the guy knows, he should just know, sort of thing. But sometimes, again, going back to personalities as well, depends on the kind of person they are. And if there's someone that knows, that trusts God, maybe they're waiting on God as well to reassure them. So it's not a blanket. Once you know, you know. That's my point.
Yeah, I think so that Shinid, you can answer the question as well in the sense of I think people dating for one guy for a year or like you talked about Ezekiel, X amount of time, and you're waiting and he's not giving you any assurance that he's even going that, that way. So do you believe that even within that waiting though, that it shouldn't take very long for them to sort it out? Figure out or receive from God, because I'm sure God would also not want somebody maybe stringing in the dust for a while. But like Ezekiel said, they have to have taken that time. So it's not like maybe love at first sight, like Disney likes to say it, but maybe more of the like it wouldn't take long before they're like, no, this is the one. How do you think, Chinadu?
No, I definitely agree with Ezekiel. Yeah. I think he's right. You're never very sure, but one thing I can say for a fact is if you don't know, you don't know. Meaning that if you think they're not the one, like if they're not the one, we know right away, but they're not the one. There's no question. The question is if you think it's the one. I think I've seen so many people that I think is the one. I eventually didn't turn out to be the one. But what I can say is we didn't. I mean, like he said, it differs from people to people. But I would say if you're actually being truthful to yourself, within a week or two, you'd know. Now, the issue I think is a lot of people either ignore red flags or try to make it work. And that was something that I learned early. A red flag, I was, oh, it's gonna work. 1 year wasted. At the end of the day, still didn't work. So, and then I think when I learned that, I started being more purposeful. So, meaning I think I had I wouldn't call it a relationship, but like a friendship that it was 1 week, like literally a week. I was like, nah, it won't work. I was like, no, let's give it. I said, I've done this song and dance before. I know we're gonna say we change. It never works. But for me, once I give it a week or two and I know, then I definitely know. Maybe it's not the same for everyone, but luckily for me, with us, I knew and I just knew. Despite all the things that happened, all the things back and forth, I kept on saying, I just know it is. And because I knew, I kept on with it.
They're really good. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask 3 quick questions. So answer as fast as you can, but I think they're really good. Pastor, please, is that okay? Pastor? Is that okay?
Wait. Could we make it like one, please? We
Why?
barely have any time. We have just 11 minutes to finish everything.
Oh,
Share the
right.
grace.
Yeah. Okay, fine. We'll make it 1 question. Oh, that's really hard. Okay, let me see. Okie dokie. How did you deal, because Shinadu, you talked about this, how did you deal with conflict in dating and not taking the person's actions as putting off, like for example, you said you broke up, like putting off, like getting put off by them, and how did you manage it, like in the times where you were maybe like, I'm not sure. So Princess Ezekiel, if you had that situation, and Shinadu and Nadia. We can hear you as well, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Go on. No, go on.
Okay, no, quickly. I think for me, it's like, obviously I had the advantage of being a bit older, so I knew a little bit more about myself and I knew the things I could deal with and the things I absolutely could not deal with. And I knew the bad things about me as well. So, and I know if it's something the other person can deal with. So for me, it's like, once there's red flags, absolute contraindications, I don't try to. My first relationship, yeah, I tried and I learned very quickly. So I don't try to work. We don't have to get married. But any other thing around that, I just, find a way to talk about it. Because for me, it's the fact that I convince myself that it's minor and it's something I can completely let go if needed. So I come from that angle of compromise, knowing that, okay, I'll try to have a discussion, but if it comes down to the fact that I'm wrong, I'm willing to completely let go because it's not one of my red flags at all. So that's how I approach conflict, coming with the fact that I can easily let go if it comes to that.
Really great.
So I think that's the basis of it is when dealing with conflict, saying sorry is one of the first words that come out of someone's mouth, because it's very easy to be, your head is all going, you just want to say this first thing that comes to mind, and but sometimes what you say can be more hurtful than the actual thing that happened. So you're just basically blowing things out of proportions when you can just apologize and be intentional about your apology, if that makes sense. And I think that's something that you're very good at, that you're very apologetic. And if you do something wrong, you admit to it. Whereas me, I do apologize, but I'm a bit more headstrong, if that makes sense. And I think it's a cultural thing. Whereas, like I was telling him, is as Nigerians, it seems like sorry is the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Nigerians. Where you sneeze, I'm so sorry. Oh, you hurt yourself, I'm so sorry. Like, you haven't done anything, yet you're still apologizing to them, which it was something fascinating that I've sort of like grasped as it went on. Whereas with us, we take our time. We take our time to apologize. We take our time to resolve conflict. And I think that's something that I've learned through him, is be apologetic and trying to resolve things in a gracious way. Yeah.
Great. Chris?
Yeah, I'll just quickly answer, as I know time has gone already. So something that we practiced when we were dating was we stayed away from sex, right, and even kissing. And what that meant is, when we had misunderstandings, we had no choice but to talk. So we had no choice but to sit down and say, you hurt me, you did this, I didn't like it, you did that, I didn't like it. Now, I tell a lot of young people, like, to stay away from these things before marriage. And one of the biggest benefits of that is you learn to talk. So even in marriage now, when we have a misunderstanding, it's normally, okay, cool, this is what I did. This is how it affected me. Or this is what it affected you. What can we do to avoid it next time? And we always have that. So every misunderstanding we have, we don't just say just the sorry element of it, but we actually talk about it as well and say, okay, cool, what can I do next time to prevent this happening? But then we also give each other that grace of, just because we've spoken about it doesn't necessarily mean that it will just automatically just fix itself. Next time it might not happen. That's the hard bit. It may happen again because, sometimes it might be a behavior that takes a while for you to overcome it. And then just being intentional in just knowing that someone taught us something that we do when we want to talk to each other, is the first thing we say is listen to my heart. So if your partner's hurt you or something, just say listen to my heart. If the person really loves you, they won't want to hurt your heart, because when my wife says that to me, I say that to her, all of a sudden everyone's emotion just kind of goes, and it declutters and it de-escalates the moment, and everyone feels more human. You feel more like, okay, do you know what? I don't want to hurt your heart. You don't want to hurt my heart. So in this moment, please listen to my heart. And then we take it from there. And honestly, that practice that we did during courtship has really helped us now, where when we have misunderstandings, we don't just say the sorry element of it. It's more or less, okay, cool, what can we do now to move on to the next stage? And when we were dating as well, when we first dated, we had a lot of misunderstandings when we were dating, that I had to say to her, I was like, I think we both agreed that let's take some time away from each other. So for about a month or so, we didn't really talk to each other. I went back to God. I said, God, I don't think this woman's for me because this misunderstanding, I don't get it. But do you know what? That moment allowed me to go back to God and get reassurance. And God really helped me and strengthened us rather through those misunderstandings that we had.
Yeah, and also knowing, sorry, just to add, when to ask for help in terms of people that you are accountable to.
Yeah.
I think there are times maybe, I think maybe once or twice, some misunderstandings we couldn't resolve. By the third, fourth day, we said it was not happening. Nobody was budging. And I think that was where it was so good that you already had people from the beginning that knew the good sides of each other, so that even when someone's acting out of character, they can easily just be unbiased and just call out the best in each other and help us find a healthy resolution. That helped us as well.
As a guy, can I just add, sorry, as a guy as well, please make sure you have someone you're accountable to, that your wife can speak to, that can speak sense into you. And likewise as a woman as well, there has to be that one person that they can call and say, do you know what, Ezekiel's moving a bit funny, and they can call you to order, and vice versa as well. So yeah, thank you.
No, amazing. This has been such an amazing session. I've literally learned so much, and I'm sure even the married people, single people, dating people, they've learned so much today. And we're definitely going to have another session. Any questions not asked, we will answer in the coming weeks, but we will definitely try and set something for the young adults to invite you guys back, because there are a load of questions to ask and we didn't even get through it. But we're very grateful to have you guys on. Thank you so much for your time, and God bless you and your marriages and your little kids. He's so cute. I forgot her name, Olivia. There you go. And bless Olivia, bless her being quiet. But I'll hand over to the person who's taking over from me. God bless everybody, and yeah, thank you for joining this set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope you don't mind. Just before Ruby, you take over, I just wanted to once again thank you, Ezekiel and the Princess, Nadia and Chinedu. You people have been such a wonderful blessing to us today, and thank you for all the young adults members